Hi, this is Tony from Malika Analytics, and we're going to do a video demonstration of using our NPM based Web Developers Toolbox with a Visual Studio 2013 application. So let's start by working on a Visual Studio 2013 based app for one of my clients. I move over to my Windows desktop here, and I start by launching GitHub desktop. Now my client's code is stored in GitHub, so I'm going to use GitHub Desktop to get the latest version of it. What we do here is I go under File, Clone Repository. Since I have permissions on that particular project, I should be able to find it here in my list of GitHub repositories. There it is. I'm going to clone it. You see the local path there. It's cloning into workspace my TalkTalk. That's where I happen to put my projects. You probably have a GitHub directory. Doesn't really matter. You'll be able to find it again later on. Then the very first thing we're going to do after it's cloned is try to get it up and running. And we're going to launch Visual Studio and make sure the project works. We do that before we actually make any changes to the project at all. Okay. I'll come back when it's finished downloading it. So my Visual Studio project has been downloaded successfully. Here it is, my talktalk.ch. Now I'm working in a separate branch right now, so we changed that branch. It's called WordPress. And the idea here is I wrote the code for this website, but my client is going to do all the styling for it. So somebody on their marketing team is going to make a whole bunch of changes in styling, and this is basically the setup they're going to use to do the styling. They're not going to write any C# or edit the SPX pages mostly. So here we go. What we're going to do is launch Visual Studio and make sure we can run this app. I've changed to the WordPress branch. My Visual Studio is open, and now I'm going to go and open up the project. So in my case, I know I'm going to open up the solution. It's in my workspace directory on my C drive. It's called my TalkTalk, and we're opening it. And we just want to make sure it runs, okay, as expected. In our particular case, we're making sure it runs, and they're running things in the right branch. So here's the guy, and compiling, and now we'll launch it. Google Chrome. And then what we're going to, after we have it launched, is we're going to go to our NPM based environment for doing the styling, okay? And I've shown that in some other videos. Success. App is launched properly. We're at this point now where we can start restyling it. So here we are. I'm back here, and I've rearranged the desktop just a little bit for this display. I've got the application running on the right, and Visual Studio and debug mode running on the left. Now our job is to get the NPM based environment up and running so that we can start editing these style sheets here and instantly seeing the changes on the website. Okay, so the way I would do it is I'd go to the GitHub desktop, I'd select my particular repository, and I'd find out where my directory is. So I'd open it up in my File Explorer, and there it is right here. Now you have a couple of ways. You need to get to your command shell prompt, so you'd probably go over here, type in cmd, launch your command shell, and then you'd cd to that directory now that you know where it is. And so in my case, I know it's C and it's workspace, and just dir to it, and then it's my.talktalk, and we cd into that. And so now I'm in the solution directory for it, but I want to go into the project. Okay, and now the very first thing, so I have to make sure that NPM is installed on this machine and in my path. I type in NPM version. Yes, it is. Make sure the gulp is running, and gulp is also installed in my path. If they're not, I go and install NPM, and I go and install Gulp, following the instructions from one of the other videos. So it's all good. However, the very first thing, we just grabbed this project off of GitHub. So we have to make sure all the NPM modules for this project are installed, okay? So there's if we type, in this case, gulp, not package, sorry. There's a file in this directory. It tells all of the modules that this project is dependent on, okay? And those modules themselves are dependent on things, etc., etc. And we have to make sure those modules are installed in this directory. And there would be a directory called node modules if they'd been installed, and they may not even be up to date. Well, there's a node modules because I've typed this before, but in your case there wouldn't be a node modules, and you type in node npm install, and it'll start doing the install. It'll read the package.json and start installing all the files. I'm not going to stay here and force you to watch that because I'm on a slow connection. Well, actually, it happened pretty quickly because I've done it before, but for you it might take a couple of minutes depending on your connection speed. So it's all done and npm's installed. Okay, now that we know that npm's installed and all the npm modules that this project needs have been installed, we're ready actually to start doing our debugging. We've got our application running here. We have our Visual Studio running here, and we'll just do more gulp file.js. We have our gulp file with all the instructions on it for what to do. And if I type in gulp serve now, watch my web browser on the right hand side of the screen there. Gulp serve will start in, shouldn't be too long. It's compiling the style sheets. Get this guy out of the way. He's sitting there in the background watching all the style sheets and stuff like this. Here's our app. It's running on a different port. There's the original one with Visual Studio. Here's the npm proxy to that one. And what the proxy gives us, so we can go in here and I could start editing a style sheet. Now I happen to know some variables, so I'll type in color and I'll change the color for our project to something else. Save it, and there, it's changed to green. Hopefully you can see that. Let's change the heading color, and we'll change that to purple, okay, and see if you'll be able to see that as well. Hopefully these colors will show up in the video. And there we go, changed. So this is exactly how we want it to be. We want the person working on the style sheets to just concentrate on editing these style sheets and be able to see their changes right away. Okay, and that's it. So if somebody made these changes, their next step actually would be to go to get, so they restyled the site. The next job would be to go over to GitHub. Okay, they've selected this project, and these are the files that have been changed here. What happened is I edited the main.scss, and then these two files were generated, and on this particular project it's showing all the differences. What we would do is we type in some comment here, changed a theme color, and then we commit it to this branch, okay? And then after I commit it, well, let's do that. We'll do a commit. Now it shows that I would push it, so I would push this up to the origin with a change, okay? And we push. And it's pushing to origin. And presto, I just made those changes. Let's undo those changes really quickly because I don't really want to push them. Save them here. Website should update. Okay. Those three files are changed again. Undo last change. Commit them to my WordPress branch. It's committed. And then I push them back up to GitHub. And presto. Bring this to the front. This machine's running a little slow because, oh, here, and the colors are all back to the way they were. This gray sort of font here and this pink sort of font up here, or whatever you want to call it. So we just did a whole iteration. Grabbed things from GitHub, installed the tools we needed, launched the servers we needed, made some changes, pushed them up to GitHub, and then undid the changes and pushed them up to GitHub again. So that's a complete loop. Thanks very much for watching. I'll just add one more step to this. Let's say now I've gone away from my desktop for a while and I'm working with other team members. So what happens is I would start GitHub desktop again, and I'd make sure I'd fetch the latest changes, because I don't really want to start working on these files if one of my teammates also made some changes. I could start doing that, but then we'd have some merge conflict, and I'd have to show you how to solve a merge conflict. So let's just avoid that. Always, before you start your work, grab the latest stuff from the GitHub repository and just save you a hassle. Okay, and that's really our finish. I want to show you one more thing. I want to show you how it is the NPM server and the Visual Studio server are interacting. There's a task, and this is the gulp file, gulpfile.js, that was in our project. And you'll notice there's a serve task, and you know that the browser sync, which is basically the web server part of the task, has been configured to work as a proxy. That means it's not going to serve the files directly. It's going to talk to another web server and serve those guys up. And that other web server is at this URL. That's the URL that when Visual Studio starts. It's the URL that you can browse your Visual Studio application. The proxy will then fetch everything from there. Now, the nice thing about using the NPM environment here is that as I edit my style sheets, the change style sheets will be injected directly into my browser without having to do a reload. And that's part of the reason we're using the NPM environment. The other one is if we had images and other things that had to be manipulated, the NPM environment gives us that. So I just want to add that proxy bit of information, because if for some reason the URL for your Visual Studio were different, I would change it here. I'd put in the new URL, and that would hook up the NPM and Visual Studio environments. So that was the gulp file.js for our project.